Welcome to Share Spotlight. Today's guest is David Lenigas. He's the Executive Chairman of Doriemus. David,
Morning.
good morning. Could you explain a little bit about Doriemus and your involvement with the business?
Yeah, Doriemus is a UK-focused oil and gas production and exploration company. I came into the company at the latter part of last year as chairman. The board thought that with my experience with what's been going on with the Horse Hill Gatwick Gusher and going through all the machinations of drilling that, going through the process of the regulators, getting the message out and the potential of the wheel for the UK, that I could add some value to the company. And I thought, do you know what, this gets me back into the Horse Hill Syndicate, because we own 10% of the Horse Hill Syndicate, which has got a lot of work going on the Gatwick Gusher this year. Subject to getting regulatory approvals for the long-term flow testing. But I was really excited about what we're doing with Brockham, and Jonathan Tidswell, who runs Angus Energy, which is now listed on AIM, he was working with me when we did the Horse Hill well, and he knows a lot about how to drill really good wells, and I trust him, and he said, Dave, we're going to go and hit Brockham and see what we can find there. So what I did was I said, look, I'll bring in the people who helped me on Horse Hill, which is the New Tech people out of Houston. They understand why Horse Hill worked, and without them, there would be no success at Horse Hill. And we did a lot of work with New Tech and the Angus boys, and decided that the well had significant potential, but it needed to be sorted out. And it's pretty exciting.
So you announced, was it last week you announced?
We announced the first phase of the work that we've done over the last month, and that was, we have picked up oil and gas zones exactly where we thought we'd find it, with respect to how it looks analogous to Horse Hill. At the moment, there's a lot of work going on splicing all the electronic logs. There's some very complicated equipment went down that hole. That shouldn't be too long, and then I imagine there's quite a big stream of information coming on pay zones, the oil maturity, the quality of the oil, and particularly we're quite excited about this thing called the ultra-wave fracture technology tool. And from what I understand, this is the first time it's been used commercially in the world. It's something that Weatherford have spent tens of millions of dollars developing. And the whole concept of this tool is to give fracture analysis live behind the work that went on down the well, to determine how fractured naturally the limestones and the clay formations are with respect to the potential of flowing oil. So this is actually going to be quite exciting.
You talked about the logging going on ongoing. When do you think you'll be able to announce, roughly timescale wise, the results of the logging?
It shouldn't be too long. I mean,
weeks, months, days?
Within weeks.
Weeks. Yeah.
I mean, by the time this goes to air, we may have even put them out.
Okay, so quite soon.
Yeah.
And that would be quite transformational. Obviously, the information you gather from that, it's going to
look. When you do work down a live well, you can see pretty much within 15 to 20 minutes of what's happening through all the logging electronic information that comes to surface, and we saw exactly what we were looking for. It's pretty analogous to Horse Hill. In fact, some areas look even better. And very exciting is what we found just below the Kimberich clays and limestones in the Corallian. And BP, when they drilled the discovery well, Brockham 1, identified the top of the Corallian had some good oil and gas pay, but they never did much with it. So we've already announced with Angus that we've hit oil and gas in the Corallian, and we're very excited about the potential of that.
The company moved from AIM to the NEX in March 2016. Can you give us an idea of the reason behind that move, and also the benefits of being on the NEX exchange?
Look, the board of Doriemus moved the company from AIM to ISDX at the time. I wasn't on the board at the time from what I gather, very specific reasons. There was some issues with respect to the AIM regulators, and the nomads was was Doriemus as an investment company suitable for listing on AIM with respect to its investment strategy? And the board was thinking that the company was at risk of being suspended from AIM.
Right.
And they took a very deliberate decision to say, okay, here are the options. We can either stay private, which I don't think is good for shareholders, or they could move to a regulated exchange, and they chose ISDX. It's been an interesting journey on ISDX. Now they've changed to NEX, and we're now seeing a little bit of trading coming through. NEX has now got 2 brokers online, and I think that's where retail sort of likes to do things these days. I mean, in the old days, I remember when I was, when I first came to London, and I did one of the largest financing on AIM's history back in 2003. I mean, I remember when people didn't trade AIM either, and I like the NEX exchange. I like the fact it's regulated, it's fully transparent. We can deal directly with our advisors and regulators, which is something which is quite new compared to what AIM, because you have to go through the Nomad system. So I think it's got very good merit for people to engage with in an alternative market. Mm-hmm. Now, I think for NEX to work properly, there needs to be more brokers being onboarded so people can trade electronically. Looking at what's happened in London in the last 10, 15 years, the old days of call your broker to put an order in, very few people do it. Most people like to trade online. And until such time as NEX gets a lot of brokers trading online, I think it's going to struggle with volume and liquidity. But as I say, I remember when AIM wasn't very liquid either.
Yeah. I know they're out.
And it does change.
They're out there now trying to encourage more brokers to do it, and the RSP gateways as well are now.
Well, the RSP gateways are now up and live.
Exactly.
I mean, I spoke to Cornhill just before Christmas, and they literally onboarded and had the RSP screen live within 2 hours.
So again, it's coming, and which is going to be good for the company, but also for the potential investors and existing investors, the liquidity.
Well, look, people need to be able to buy and sell.
Exactly.
So it's not just about quick call your broker and go and buy Doriemus. It's about people need the ability to buy, sell, or hold.
Yeah.
So the more onboarding brokers and institutional type players can come into the next market, the more active it will become. And I know there's a lot of companies looking at moving onto ISDL or NEX, principally because of the reason of the way that the relationship goes between the regulator and the company. And I know there's quite a few people reviewing it and stacking up with the view of either dual listing or just moving their listing down to ISDX.
But again, it is a regulated area, so there's protection not only for the shareholder but also for the company itself.
Well, there's massive protection. Massive protection. And I like the fact we can deal directly with the regulator themselves.
Yeah.
Because that has good benefit. Because as a company official, you want to know what the rules are, and you want to be able to engage with your regulator and your advisors to say, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing. How do we do this properly? And I think that just from a company perspective makes managing the company in the future of where you want to take it a whole lot more transparent and quite determinative.
Looking at the rest of 2017, do you have a timetable in mind for Newsflow?
Well, I see a lot of news flow. I mean, right now we're in the midst of what have we found at Brockham, and I think that will become more and more evident with multiple news releases.
So the first one being imminent-ish, and then
over the next weeks to months, and hopefully Brockham's being a valuable part of producing oil to the UK economy, and I think that's important, particularly now that Britain's heading towards Brexit, and Britain needs to look at things like oil and energy security. Britain is an importer of a lot of hydrocarbons, and the more domestic security Britain has in the whole energy mix, and oil's just part of the energy mix, is important. But we've also got very significant work going on at Horse Hill. There's applications in with all the councils at the moment for a very long-term extended flow test at Horse Hill, which is the next phase to determine the significance and the flow rates, long-term flow rates, reserves, resources. That process is in play with the authorities at the moment. So that's a big program. That's nearly half a year's worth of work, and I know that there's plans to do sidetracks and new appraisal wells, so that we can actually put together a field development plan to go to the government to put Horse Hill into production. And we'd like to be drilling a new oil well at Lidsey, which is down south of the Wheel Basin near Bognor Regis, which we have a a 20% interest in with Angus, with the right to go to 30%. And I'm very excited about the concept of that. And the other thing I'm probably even more excited about, even though Brockham and Horse Hill are very exciting, is the fact we've got a 5% interest in the Isle of Wight acreage. And the Arrington 2 well in the middle of the Isle of Wight is a phenomenal play. And it was drilled. There is a lot of oil there. And we're also looking forward to getting involved in that. So we've got 3 or 4 very live fish going right at the moment. And 2017 is the transformational year for Doriemus.
Will you be drilling all those 3 prospects, or 2 other new prospects, or will you just be looking at the licensing and
No, I mean,
planning?
Brockham's happening now. I mean, there's scope there for more wells in Brockham this year under its original permissions that it's got. Horse Hill, there's a big appraisal program going on. I'd like to see Horse Hill drilling another well before the end of the year. And Lidsey, we would like to be drilling absolutely this year. So I mean, we've got 3 live fish going right now for 2017, which Doriemus will be an active player in, and we're well funded for that.
And just going back to Brockham, the current well you've drilled, will that become a production well, or is it just an exploration?
It is a production well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The work that's been done on this well is a production well. So all we've been doing is closing off the old sidetracks which were defunct, which had hit water, and because no one bothered about the Kimbrich or the Corallian, and turning it back into a production well. Brockham is a producing field. All of these wells are potential producers. And
for any potential existing shareholders, just a few words, why do you think the company has its potential for an investor?
Always do your own research and seek advice. I think Doriemus is so undervalued because it sits on an exchange right now that is quite illiquid. People would prefer to go and trade Mainboard or AIM here in London at the moment, but that will change. And it's the people who lead with thought, in my view, that play the long-term game that make the most money. But do your own research, seek advice, but I think this thing's very undervalued, and over time we'll move it forward. Now, we've also announced that we're looking at moving Doriemus to the main list. That takes a while, and what people, particularly retail shareholders, don't understand is to list on any exchange, whether we move Doriemus back to AIM or back to or onto the LSE main list, standard list, is we need to have a competent persons report on Horse Hill. So we have competent persons reports on Brockham and Lidsey, but to do a full CPR on Horse Hill is nearly £100,000 and 6 months worth of work, because the independents need to do all of that work and be comfortable to sign off on potential reserves, resources. And UCOG don't have a CPR for Horse Hill, so we will need to do it ourselves. So
you won't do a combined one, or
no, we'll do it ourselves.
Your own one.
Yeah, obviously with UCOG's help, because we want to make sure the message is the same. So we're going through that process, and that does take a while. And I know retail gets impatient. They want everything yesterday, but they don't understand when you're at a coalface, it actually does take time and it costs money.
David, thank you very much for coming in today. If you want to find out more information about Doriemus, do go to the company website and visit their investor relations section, where you'll find Newsflow and more information about the company and its share price.